in a time where authenticity and transparency is so lacking, I find like this is a much easier medium to operate in.
Yeah, 100%.
But I wanted to pick your brain. So you mentioned, because we both kind of traveled down this path of like pushing really hard. You're trying to get to that next close and everything. You were trying to work with your clients, expand your business. So, and then you mentioned you had to, or you overcame that a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about that journey because I'm really honest, always working through that transparently, but I've made a lot of growth inside there, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came over some of those feelings that you were having.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how you did it too. I would
Sure.
say, I don't know what, I guess, I was going through I was navigating some grief about almost 2 years ago now. And I think one of my ways to navigate it was just to get really busy.
Yeah.
And I broke rules that I had already had for so long. Like, what's my morning ritual?
Mm.
When do I check the phone in the morning, etc. And I allowed myself, it's such a slippery slope, but I allowed myself to do things like that. And then the cumulative effect for me, just for a year and a half, but imagine people do this for decades, like,
Yeah.
was I stopped being present for my family. I stopped connecting with others too. Instead of like reaching out, having coffee with a friend, I would just sit there on my phone.
Mm.
Like, why? So the only thing I did really was make rules about my phone. It's never in, I don't go to sleep with it next to me, but like I give myself at least an hour before I even open the phone.
Mhm.
Um, and then during dinner, it's not even anywhere near me. Once it's time to chill after we put down our 4-year-old, the phone is nowhere near me. That
Mhm.
alone has made a humongous impact in my life. Now,
Yeah.
meanwhile, missed messages. I've missed important things. I haven't responded on time. That's kind of the price that, in a way, I was willing to pay to get kind of quality presence back in my life.
Have you found as you've gotten older, it's harder to jump back into your habits and your flow and everything? Have you noticed that?
Well, that it's harder to jump back into the old habits.
Into like, so you said you have like your morning routine, you're going to the gym, et cetera, et cetera. You have this block of thing that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
As you've gotten older, has it been
Oh,
harder? Like if you take some time off, is it harder to jump back into that cycle that you had?
it's kind of always that, like, I'm really good at my routine until we go on vacation, and then I'm like, ah, how do I get back? So
Yeah.
to me, it's not the hardest thing has not been about aging. It's been about adding a child to the
Okay.
unit.
Yeah.
Because I was always a morning person. If I was a nighttime person and all my rituals happen at night, I think those people are still able to do it because you put your child down and you have your whole evening ahead of you. For me, all
Yeah.
my routines are morning.
Yeah.
Nighttime is not when I do my routines. So that's been the hardest part. Now that she's 4, I can see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can see that there will be a moment where I can have my routines again.
Yeah.
So right now I just will do, I used to do qigong in the mornings. I used to stretch in the mornings. I used to
Mhm.
meditate, all that stuff. Forget it.
Yeah.
Um, but I can see a little world where it's coming back. I'll take whatever I can. If she's eating breakfast, I'll do a little qigong while she's eating breakfast, and that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But
I've noticed as I've been progressing in jiu-jitsu, we were talking a little bit before about how your 4-year-old is starting jiu-jitsu. That's
yeah,
awesome. I love that.
yeah.
Love that. Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Two things people say they always wish they started earlier: investing and martial arts. So cool
Yeah.
stuff. But we were talking about um, the importance of jiu-jitsu and everything, and I found that as I take breaks from jujitsu, or like let's say go on a longer vacation and I try to jump back into my morning routine or my cycle, it's getting harder for me as I get older.
Yeah.
The longer you take, then the older you get, it's harder to jump back into those cycles. And like you said, like if you take, there's some people that take a decade off. Like that's how you spiral out of control. You don't end
Yeah.
up like super obese and like all these things going on. But what I feel people don't realize, it's like it's not like a night and day thing. It's just those just noticeable differences, and you compound that over a decade, then your life could be upside down. But it starts with those like routines and everything, and like what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I know. I know. But
Yeah.
and for most of my life, I was so disciplined, even though there'd be moments, like you say, where I'm not totally in my routine, but I was still really, really on track. I mean, yes, there was
Yeah.
kind of like the band expanded, but But throwing a child in the mix, oh my God, that throws
Yeah.
it. That throws
Well,
everything off.
you're forced to come to terms where it's like, hey, I have to take care of this person now. This is not
Yeah.
a this is not an argument. This is there
No.
is priorities. There is
Yeah.
priorities here, and the kid is the priority. But you mentioned how did some things that I've been wrestling with pushing really hard in the business, trying to expand and everything. And I'll kind of open up and explain a little bit about what's been going on in my head. There might be some overlaps with what
Yeah.
you've been going down, but I found that like everyone is chasing something, right? Everyone's chasing some type of feeling, and I feel a lot of times it goes back to validation and love. That's definitely been a part of my big self-improvement journey. It's a concept that I thought I had relatively pinned down as I've been working through everything the past decade. But what I'm doing with generational growth, a large part of it is the mission aspect. That's at the core of it to help out those disadvantaged and jujitsu communities because it plays such a large impact in my life. But there's also a piece of me that is pushing so hard to prove to myself that I'm actually capable of doing this. So I was a former Army officer. I never in a million years saw myself going down a small business ownership route. And to be frank, I was always like a little bit scared. Like, I don't want to do that. That's way too much risk. Why would I do that when I have this really clear, easy path? Perhaps not easy, but a path ahead of me,
Clear.
right?
Yeah.
And when I jumped in, it's like I'm pushing so hard to prove that I'm capable of doing this. And why don't I pushing that? Well, to get that validation and love, that's what it stems back from. So I found that things are way easier if you give yourself that validation up front. You don't have to push until 2 o'clock in the morning and expand the business. It's going to be a hell of a lot easier if you just give yourself that love up front, and then everything else will come as it should play out on the back end. But it's something that I've always struggled with. I feel like all drivers, whether you're a small business owner, athlete, et cetera, we get trapped in these cycles of just like pushing so hard. But if we just give ourselves a little bit of self-love and like validation up front, that tends to make things a lot easier. And that's what I've been working through.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think we all, I think I'm quite a bit older than you, and I think that that never goes away. So
Yeah.
it's like you discover it. When I first discovered, it's like, oh my God, it was like like illuminating in
Mm,
such huge ways. And I was a little disappointed to see it come up, especially becoming a parent. It comes up again. And
mhm.
I think what happens is
Interesting. Okay.
but it's different, right? So like the way I see it is we have these kind of core wounds and they
Mhm.
show up in moments. I think being in a relationship and letting yourself get very intimate, all that core stuff is going to come up.
Yeah.
Having a child, all that core stuff is going to come up. Having loss, all that core stuff is going to come up. And I think what we get by starting to do our work early is like, oh, I know you. Yeah, yeah, you're that thing that needs to have validation, or you're that thing that needs to have love, or you're that part, for me, it's kind of like you're that part of you that doesn't feel lovable, like
Mm,
and right now, when it came up in the beginning, I may have gone into overdrive, I may have done all kinds of things to not feel it. Today it comes up, it's familiar, and doesn't take me down the way it once did. It's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, cool, you're up. What's going on in my life? Why? What's happening? Time to explore again, but not
Mhm.
time to go down a crazy path or time to like self-medicate with whatever you self-medicate. Just
Mhm.
acknowledging it alone is a huge help for me.
Yeah.
um,
Feeling it, just like being
and letting
okay with
yourself feel
those.
it.
Yeah. Not pushing it away. That's what addiction is. Just allowing yourself to sit with those feelings and be okay in that manner.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it's a never ending process. That's something that I've really became it's been a big unlock for me in a new way. So I recently got my brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and
Oh,
something that
yay.
I've realized um no matter how much like as you level up in life, whether it's through the military, whether it's through investing, whether it's through jiu-jitsu, you're always kind of at this stage where it's like no one knows what the fuck is going on. No one, we have a clue, we have a grasp of everything, but it's just a bunch of people like trying to figure out which way is up and which way is down. And that's something I mentioned I thought I had that self-love concept figured out to a high level from 10 years of self-work. But this business, as I've opened it and expanded and everything, it's a new angle. It's a new
Yeah.
angle and made me realize like, hey, there's levels to this game. And I'm not as high up as I thought I would. You know, it's another ego check for me to be like, hey, this is something I need to work on, which is great. That's the whole point. I think that's the whole point of why we're here, is to level up our consciousness and help other people and get in alignment with what your sole purpose is.
Yeah. Beautiful. The martial arts that I've really been drawn to as I get older is Aikido. And in Aikido,
Mhm.
they mention this a lot. The higher your belt, the less you know. The
Yeah.
higher your belt, the more you acknowledge that we don't know anything.
Mhm.
And the more esoteric and kind of out there the teachings become as you get higher and deeper into it. I am not speaking as an expert because I'm by no
Mhm.
means an expert, but it's one of the reasons I'm drawn to it,
Yeah.
to that martial art.
Yeah, it's physical, mental, emotional, and you wouldn't believe it, but it's spiritual as well too. There's so
Yes.
many because you're forced to conflict with your ego. And
Yeah.
when you're forced to conflict with that, well, there's spirituality that's embedded inside that. But I'll tie this into our conversation on wealth now too. Um, sometimes as you're progressing through the ranks in jiu-jitsu, you may think you have a move figured out, right? And then you are shown a different angle, you're shown a different entry, and it's just like, boom, wow, you're like your whole knowledge base goes away, right? Or it's like this whole new thing. I've experienced that a lot in the wealth building scene too, which is where we worked, which is where our paths intersected. I thought I was doing everything right. I was investing in all the, quote unquote, right index funds. My allocations were where I thought they should be. I was getting an A+ on my report card based on
Yeah.
traditional investing paths. But as I discovered, the game I was playing just like was not in alignment with what I'm trying to do. And there's so many different levels. Even where I'm at now, I'm learning stuff and it's just like, what are you doing? Like that is so crazy. It's just this infinite like depth and understanding with wealth building. It's really, really cool. It's really truly fascinating to see what you can do. It's almost like an art, and like it's like a medium that you could practice in. So very cool.
Yeah, I would also say again, I've got some. I'm a little bit older, and I would say the one thing I would tell my younger self. I don't even think it's, oh, tell your younger self because I messed up by not knowing it. I guess I would say one thing that's become so clear to me as I get older, um, and I'm in my 50s, so like I get some wisdom point, I get some like elderly points, but I would say it's that everything changes. And if we're going to tie it back to wealth, the things that I thought in my youth, like, oh, um, get rental units, which I
Mhm.
did. Um, And I thought that was like the bulletproof plan. That's it. There's my retirement plan. And then as
Yeah.
life changes, my investment strategy changes, the way I view things change. Even most recently, right? Like I'm in the world of private money lending, and the way that which to me is one of the most passive, truly passive ways
Mhm.
to make your money work for you, passive and consistent.
Mhm.
Um, and then I got to a certain point, I realized, wait a minute, the way this works thus far is me being an operator, right? I am the operator of the portfolio, which is not very passive. The passive part is becoming a lender. So now I've partnered with somebody who's both my mentor and somebody who's kind of the originator of build connecting people that are
Mhm.
looking for to put their money, to have their money grow and do private money lending. And on the other end are people who have gone through his certification process
Mhm.
to become wise investors. So that way, if you are a person who, yeah, I see the power in private money lending, then it's kind of
Mhm.
like, where am I going to go? And
Yeah.
how do I know I can trust you? Right. It's really,
Mhm.
really a scary kind of it's vast. Um, and this to me allows people who want to do private money lending a way to feel more confident in it. It doesn't need to be me as the operator. It's people
Yeah.
like me that have all been vetted through this program. So I
Yeah.
like that idea for so many reasons, because what you and I talk about a lot is compounding.
Yeah.
And if you're a private money lender, the best way to do it is to apply that concept of compounding to it. Well, this
Mhm.
puts you in a community of people, so you can have opportunities on a regular basis to do that.
Amazing. And a lot of things can go wrong with real estate and private lending too. So making sure you have that community and making sure you have trusted professionals that actually know what they're doing, it's essential. But let's rewind a little bit. I want to learn a little bit more about your story. So you mentioned that you didn't start with private lending. It came from owning real estate. What happened before that? Tell me a little bit more about your journey and how you ended up in to private lending.
Yeah. Let's see. So my journey is that I chose a career that was not necessarily going to give me any sort of financial independence, to say the
Mhm.
least. And that career was choosing the path of education. I'm still in it. And I started a nonprofit 23 years ago. It's still up and running. I'm still an active leader of it. I don't see myself leaving for a little bit. But when I leave, it's like, thank you so much for your service. Bye bye.
Mm.
There's no equity or selling it or literally it was fun. We built it from zero to now several tens of millions, working with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, kids. We have over 400 employees. That's cool that we did that. I
Yeah.
love that experience, but it wasn't necessarily my financial freedom. So early on in my 20s, before I even started this, I started getting interested in investing. And I'm not just real estate and just private money lending into real estate. I also have a strategy that I use in the stock market.
Mm.
I think the complement of the two are nice. I don't think you have to
Yeah.
choose one or the other. At least I don't. Um, and so I got interested in that. I would say on a personal level, that was confusing for me because the worlds that I'm in, because it's education, it's very values driven and mission driven. The desire to create financial wealth felt to me like an opposition with the work that I was doing. And especially being in a leadership role, I felt the need to keep it very quiet and very private because it
Mhm.
felt like I was not aligned values wise. I
Yeah.
have only recently come to terms with like that's not true. They can be hand in hand. There's a way to marry those two and still have integrity and still stand in your values.
Yep.
Um, and so because I had not a great salary, it took me a while to get my first real estate acquisition, and I got help. And so I bought a condo that I
Mhm.
lived in for several years, and then 2008 happened.
Mm.
And again, patience. You just write it out. Just live in the house. You're living in it anyway. Enjoy it. So I just continued to pay my mortgage until 2011, at which point now it's called the Burr method. It wasn't called it then, but I refinanced, took out equity, took out cash, used that cash as a down payment for then a single family home,
Okay.
um, which was awesome. Yay. Oh my God, it's working. It's like when it first works, when your like vision 15 years ago suddenly becomes a reality, it's so fun.
Mm. Yeah.
And this is another thing we can side note this, but when is enough is also another
Mm.
question, right? Like I've been you said chasing, it's interesting. And there's a part of me that just needs to acknowledge I like the chase and I like that moment of accomplishment. That moment where I pulled money out for the first time and got a single family home. Oh my God, it was amazing. And
Mm.
then back to life and my demons, right? And back to the chase in a way.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm kind of digressing, but at one point, because my salary wasn't high enough, I thought, cool, this is going to be my formula. Let's do this. And then, of course, I hit a wall because my salary couldn't justify any more, um, a traditional lending institute like a bank
Mhm.
wouldn't feel comfortable lending to me. And
Yep.
that's where I started thinking, oh, shoot, my plan's not going to work. What do I do now? And that's when I went back in and got interested in creative financing and private money lending.
Okay, and that's when the private lending business started to operate at the end of all that. Okay. Let's dive into that when is enough concept. So did you wrestle? I assume you wrestled with that, and what was the outcome of that whole battle that you had?
I'm still wrestling with that. It's a
Mm.
little bit of the outcome is just being honest with myself around there is joy I get from initiating. I'm an initiator more than I am a maintainer, right?
Mm.
I
Yep.
do have a business partner and he's the maintainer. I'm the initiator. I like to start things and that gives me and I think the same goes for not necessarily wealth building because I haven't arrived as much as I wanted to. But then again, when is enough? There are numbers that I've hit that I said 20 years ago, and it doesn't feel
Mhm.
like it's enough. So is it
Yeah.
truly not enough, or is it that there's this like unquenchable thirst? Or
Mm.
is it that I enjoy that I truly get enjoyment out of this?
Yeah.
you know.
I feel like that's where I think everyone struggles with that too. And you see it time and time again, like people that accumulate even millions and billions of dollars, they're empty on the inside. So I feel like when constructing how much is enough, that's why I really like getting clear on why and like constructing your mission and then backwards planning off of that. It may not be a monetary like a dollar amount because you get stuck on the hedonic treadmill. But there's a balance in there too because like business is a game of numbers. Your drive, so honestly, when you rip it at its core, it's kind of like a math equation. X
Yeah.
amount of input is going to lead to X amount of output. And I feel like sometimes you could get trapped in there because you do need to have like a target that you're working towards, but the target isn't the end. It's, the lifestyle. What do you want your life to look like? I think if you define that a lot too, and you're constantly, doing some type of review to analyze what's going on, I feel like that could help keep things in check. I think
Yeah.
it's always going to be a battle. That kind of going back to that wealth building knowledge conversation that we had, or jujitsu knowledge, it's always going to be a battle, but you could help contain the madness in a pretty efficient manner.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I, I've always kind of been a spiritual person. And
Hmm.
again, sometimes those felt in conflict as well, similar to what I was saying with the values driven organization. Um, but one thing that I've done is if I'm feeling a little too in the chase, I'll turn up my spirituality and I'll turn
Hmm.
up my practices as much as I can, given the 4-year-old. And that alone just
Yeah.
kind of it takes away the like seduction of the chase, the like hook that the chase has, and it
Yeah.
just kind of loosens it and it gives me a little more perspective. Just turning up my spiritual practice a little bit
Yeah.
helps in those kind of moments.
You're forced to come into contact with what reality really is. It's so easy to get plugged into, the matrix, if you will. It's so easy to fall into that hole and just continue to be plugged in. But
Mhm.
whatever your thing is, just being able to plug out,
Yeah,
even for a
exactly.
minute, can
Yep.
be so beneficial because really at the end of the day, like the only thing you have control over really is your attitude.
Yeah.
And that is a really powerful thing. That came from Viktor Frankl, and I immediately thought of him. I was telling you that story when I was walking back to from jujitsu, just completely plugged in, had like a 7 to 9 type of day, and just like looking up at the sunset, I was like, ah, damn, this is reality.
Yeah.
This is what life really is. It just take a second to breathe, and your practices help you do that in an efficient manner.
The attitude, the mindset, it's incredible. And that's what I was saying earlier, where those wounds, those patterns that we have, they don't go away. They just get lighter. And I'm able to go back to a mindset that I know will get me out of it. Right. So it's like
Mhm.
I'm able to just, it all depends, right? If you're going, I was navigating grief. That's a hard one. That is a hard one. But at the end of, a year and a half later, 2 years later, I'm able to get back and do my practice. And it's all about the mindset, all about the connection to something deeper, all
Mhm.
about just a little bit of a practice that gets me out of the grind of the day-to-day grind.
I love it. So you're telling me about your journey stepping into private lending and everything. Private lending can be a tricky concept for people that have not heard about it before. So if you were to describe it to someone who just came from the market, they have no clue what private lending is, how would you explain it?
Uh, to me, the reason it stands out in comparison to things like investing your money in the stock market is it is consistent, it's reliable, it's not volatile. And
Mm.
I think it's hard for us right now with the stock market having not really had we haven't been in a recession in a while. I can see why people may not value that, but when you get to a point
Mm.
either later in life or when we start to experience some of the volatility that the stock market can put us in,
Mhm.
there is such an appreciation for that.
Mhm.
And so that alone is one thing. The other thing is, as I've gotten more into it, I've understood just the power of compounding.
Mm.
Um, when you and I talk and we're like speaking to people and I have a visual, I can show it visually, but essentially, there is a way to get into a safe investment. You do want to make sure you're educated as a private money lender. That's very, very important. And the thing that I was talking about with the matchmaking between people who want to do private money lenders to people who are investing like me.
Mhm.
There is first an education component. You can't even become a lender without getting certified. It's easy. It's not like months of work, but it's really, really good knowledge to have. This isn't
Mhm.
just like, okay, go. You want to know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Um, so it's consistent. I already forgot what I was saying, but to me, not only, oh, there it is. So not only is it consistent, but you can have it kind of, it's kind of like when you go into a mutual fund. I'm using old terms, I know this, but you go into a
Mhm.
mutual fund and it reinvests. This is what you are going to do on your own. Once you
Yeah.
start collecting the payments,
Mhm.
you then reinvest it and you make this a habit. It's habitual, it's a routine, it's
Yep.
something you do regularly. And with the terms that we have with our private money lenders, you can double your account. Sorry, you can double your initial investment amount just from doing this. We call it the snowball event effect
Yep. Yeah.
within 5 years.
Yeah.
It's basic compounding, but you haven't put in any more money. You just the initial money you put in, you've just reinvested using private money lending, getting terms that are optimal, and you have doubled your initial investment without adding any more principal. That's pretty incredible in five
Yeah.
years.
That's just velocity. It's continually cycling money. When looking at it from like a bird's eye view, this is the way I kind of frame it. It's just an IOU. It's a note. It's like a block of money that's going to give you some type of return. That could be
Right.
the same thing as a bond or an ETF, mutual fund, whatever you want to look at. It's just another IOU to give you a certain rate of return. But then you mentioned about some of the perks of doing this. With the stock market, what happens if COVID 2.0 pops off, or if we
Right.
invade Iran next month, which holy shit might happen,
Right.
what's going to, and if your vision is to continually cycle money and you're trying to build assets and everything, but you can't control what's going to happen in current events, then there's some disconnect there, right? But that's what traditional past are taught for us. It's taught put all of your money into these accounts, which you have quote unquote control over, and that's what's going to use to
Right.
fulfill your retirement. I found there's a really big disconnect there. Most people's vision or goal is to increase their passive income so they have no more optionality. They have optionality so they don't have to work so much. People are trying to buy back time, but their strategy is going to accounts that they have no control over. So if you're trying to block out like a 10-year plan, let's say, and I'm trying to buy assets and go build my cash flow and do all these things, but years 2 to 5 are all spent in the red because whatever happened in current events, how are you going to execute that plan? This isn't an attack on the market. There's great money to be made, but I find that allocations tend to be the main issue. Like me personally, I was doing 80 to 90% of my monthly income going into different brokerage accounts.
Oh my God.
That's great. It was made a lot of money, but it wasn't in alignment with my goals because I
Yeah.
was deferring that game basically until I'm 60 with all those government accounts. Um, but yeah, private lending gives you a medium to where you could get more control. It's like investing instead of investing in the greater market and all of the, we'll call it the fuckery that happens with that. You invest in your network and your network and you can trust your network and build those relationships. This isn't saying that this is completely risk free. There are things that could go wrong, but check it out. There's things that go wrong in the real estate market too.
Oh
If you
yeah.
have 100 properties, not every single one of your deals is going to be perfect even if you're going in a turnkey fashion, right? Like there are going to be bad things that happen. And that's going to happen in private lending. But compare that to the stock market. Bad
Right.
things are the norm in the stock market. We already know that this is going to happen, and we all jump into the game and put all of our money there. So it's just this huge contradiction, which I find very interesting, but cool.
Well, and you also brought up the whole accounts that are frozen till you're 60. And then when you start to take money out, you're paying taxes on them. That's another,
Yeah.
whew, that's a big one too, which is why I like what you do, because there's a lot of tax protection, which I'm not an expert, you are, but I know that
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons I'm very, very drawn to what you do.
I got a question for you. So this was a debate that, or not a debate, but kind of a friction point that we had as I was starting. And as I was funding my whole life policies too, it was, okay, let's say you're, a high income W-2 people. That's typically the clientele that I work with. And, they have all this money that's trapped inside government accounts, but let's say it's traditional and they want to take some money out and put some of those dollars to work now. So would you ever say it's a good idea to, take a tax hit, whether it's that, 10% on the early Roth, if it's not coming from contribution dollars, or taking that ordinary income hit tax on traditional methods to be used for private lending. I'm sure you've encountered this time and time again with your investors, but what is typically your path of discussion when encountering that question?
I mean, it's so case specific, and I would
Yeah.
never actually give any sort of advice on that because I don't know their whole picture.
Mhm.
Um, People that I work with have not done that. They do
Mhm.
often they do whatever they can to not do that. I have people I work with
Mhm.
that the large majority of the people that I work with as lenders have the self-directed IRA. They don't need
Yeah.
to take money out. It
Yep.
stays within their IRA account.
Mhm.
Um, and people what I found sadly is that people get wind of this thing called the self-directed IRA. Oh my God, I can invest in things that are not stock market. Sign me up. They do all the work to sign up, and then the money just often sits there because it's decision paralysis. It's like so scary to think about what you're going to do with that money. And so the
Mhm.
people who I end up talking to, they just have it sitting in cash in their self-directed IRA, and we
Mhm.
immediately put it to work.
Okay. Yeah, that's the
Very
majority
rarely
of
are people
clients.
taking
Okay.
money out of their IRA to do this.
Yeah. I was kind of in the same boat. When I was doing my analysis and funding my whole life policies, I just took some contribution dollars because my tax bill with that was zero. So took contribution dollars from my Roth and my TSP, and that's what I used to fund my one-time lump sum. I don't think I would have gone down the path and like liquidated a bunch of money from if I was on traditional side because that really doesn't make sense. I feel, you mentioned every situation is going to be different and 100%, like you really do have to do that analysis and everything. It could make sense, like maybe if you're in a super low tax bracket and you're expecting to, that not to be the case as you're going throughout time. But yeah, definitely it's going to be a case by case basis, but that's just a little bit on my story. But you mentioned doing notes out of the self-directed IRA, and tell me a little bit more about that vehicle, the self-directed IRA, and how do you see people get into these, and what are they typically buying with the self-directed IRA?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on self-directed IRAs. There's people, you and I have a friend in common who is
Mhm.
really great at defining this. But the bottom line is a self-directed IRA allows you to self-direct it and to invest in things that are not stocks, bonds, equities, et cetera, which is the more traditional IRA.
Yep.
That can be anything. It could be crypto, it could be real estate, it could be becoming a private money lender. There's a long list of things you can do.
Mhm.
I come into the picture for the private money lending opportunities because I myself am an operator that offers those opportunities for people with terms that I think are attractive, which is 12% interest rate, fully amortized over 5 years. And again, I recommend the snowball effect, meaning you continue to do this for as long as you have. Everybody's got different needs of when they want to start collecting the cash flow.
Mhm.
Um, and so the two people I work with are people who have self-directed IRAs or people who are have a whole life policies and they take kind of the difference, the arbitrage. Self-directed IRA, you can start it. You can call me. I can refer you to people. At this point, I know several custodians pretty well. I have a feeling of who I like and which one has which perks, so I can kind of match it based on what people think, their short term and long term consists of. Um, it's not hard, but it's a little administrative. That's why I say, wow, the people who start a self-directed really put in effort into it.
Mhm.
And so I want to, it's nice to be able to give them an option that makes it worth all the effort that they did to open up the self-directed IRAs.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, for those who are interested, I'm not attached to a specific custodian. So you can search online self-directed IRAs. You'll see several of them come up. Search who you like. You can reach out to me. I can tell you some of the people and the contacts that I have in different custodians or administrators. Um, and when you do that, there is no arbitrage, meaning you're not borrowing. When you have a
Mhm.
whole life, you can speak to that for the whole life policy. You're not borrowing, it's just your account. So it literally just accumulates within your account. And I think that is a pretty amazing, it's amazing to see it happen slowly but surely and consistently and reliably.
Yeah, I'd like to look at the different vehicles. It's just a different rule set. It's just a location to store money. Capital has to reside somewhere. It's just a matter of what rule set do you want to play with. And when looking at building your wealth strategy, it's not every case is going to be exactly the same. I see it
Mhm.
as like a both and and thing. I love you. I have a self-directed IRA. I store lots inside there. It's a great vehicle to use. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. There's so many different vehicles out there. It's just a matter of driving the vehicle that is going to take you to your path in the most efficient manner. You know, if
Right.
you're going through an off-road trail, then don't take a Prius, take a truck. And you know, a truck might be a self-directed IRA for you. It may not be a whole life policy. So just
Yes.
match your goal, match your intent with your strategy, and then things will generally work out. We talked a little bit about the notes and how you use these things, but how do you actually structure these private lending notes? So we know we understand the concept. It's a an IOU, there's a lot more perks with it in terms of control and guarantees, but like what's actually backing this? You know, like if we go
Yeah.
buy a mutual fund or ETF, it's backed by these companies that we're investing in. You know, let's say if we do it's backed by the S&P 500 or whatever index that you're coming into. What are private lending notes backed by? Can it change? And what are yours backed by?
Very good question. And I would say this is one of the important things for people who are just entering this world to pay attention to. These private money lending opportunities are backed by the actual real estate. What does that mean? That means if something happens, if you are in arrangement with me or any other operator, and something happens where I default, I'm no longer paying you what we are under contract, you then become the owner of the property. And what I always advise people is make sure there is anywhere from 10, 20, if you can get 30% equity in this asset. So right away, it is a worthwhile exit. So if for whatever reason your operator, say me, defaults early in the relationship, you already have 30% equity in that property.
Mhm.
And that's what we mean when we say backed by real estate. Literally, you become the owner. And in my setup, it's not joint ventures or anything like that. You are literally the only person on the note. The mortgage is in your name, you're in first position, and you're in the only position,
Yeah.
meaning if something happens, it's automatic. There's no question, there's no confusion. You are the owner, and you then either sell it or you have all the choices that you might want.
Yeah, and that's not the norm. Like I do a lot of networking, looking for different note providers and everything because it's something that I do it and am interested in. That's not the norm. Like first position notes that are backed by secure investments, that's not the norm. Tell me a little bit more about the risks that you see with this because we talked about that at the front end. Like you have to get these structures right, and if it's
Yeah.
not right, like you could really end yourself and some sketchy waters. I mean, it's just like real estate, right? You got to make sure that your deal is actually, um, going to be advantageous. So tell me a little
Yeah.
bit more about the structure of your notes and some risks that you see with this.
Yeah, so when I'm in relationship with a private money lender, I'll speak to it, but I'll also speak to the now like what I call the matchmaking. It's called Lens Smart, and
Mhm.
that's the guy who's both my mentor and a peer in kind of connecting people like me who are operators with people like me also who are lenders because I do both.
Yeah.
Um, so in both cases, we will make sure there is a mortgage. Like I said, you are in the first lien position and only. We'll make sure there is a promissory note that spells out all the terms that we have put out there.
Mhm.
And we'll have an insurance policy. So you're covered from all the different angles. Um, and part of what he's doing, because we recognize that in the world of private money lending, it is so scary to not know what you're doing. We're used to big banks handling this, right? Suddenly
Yeah.
we're now doing it. So there's a level of intimidation. Um, so the reason why in LendSmart, um, he will only match people who have been certified by his training is to ensure that it is investors who are following this format
Mhm.
and lenders who know what to look for. And that way, the deals just continue to operate. They operate on their own. It's not hard. You just once you're in a private money lending situation and you make sure you got all your paperwork out, it's ACH transfer on a monthly
Mhm.
basis, automatic.
And
Um,
And these notes that you have, is this like a one-time lump sum interest that you're paid at the end of like a year or like a 3-year hold? Or like how do you,
Okay.
is it amortized? Like how is that structured?
Very good question. So that I think those kind of fix and flip loans are not the ones that we do. I think those can be successful. They can also have a lot of risks. That's not my area. My
Mhm.
area is in fully amortized loans. So that means our loans get amortized over 5 years. You get 12%. Every month you're getting paid both principal and interest, right? So
Mhm.
every month that changes. The dollar amount is the same, but the amount of principal and interest fluctuates, just like when we are
Yeah.
in a mortgage with a lending
Yeah. Yeah. I
institution.
find that's a really good strategy to compare what, this is what I do personally with turnkey real estate. You mentioned before you kind of went out of the ownership economy as you progressed on and everything. But the cash flow margins on turkeys tend to be a little bit lower. And it's a common problem that exists in real estate.
Yeah.
There's other benefits of ownership, aka the tax benefits. Like a lot of times people will buy properties and they don't cash flow just because you could do a lot of tax harvesting. But combining the turnkey real estate gives you access to the ownership economy, and then the cash flow from private lending helps solve some of those thinner margins in the turnkey space. So I really like the idea of combining turnkey plus private lending. But you mentioned you stepped away from real estate and mostly are just focusing our private lending is your main avenue. What drew you away from ownership? And you mentioned there was a shift as time went on. What was responsible for that?
Um, Again, I'm going to bring in the child. I mean,
Mhm.
we're older parents, right? We've adopted a child, and um, whew, that is a time that takes up a lot of time. And
Yeah.
so it was my relationship to time. Before that, I had all the time
Mhm.
in the world. Sure, you want me to call it at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. or 7 a.m. No problem. I got you.
Gotcha.
Now with a child, I don't own my time the way I once did.
I
And more
gotcha.
than that, oh my God, they grow so fast. You really, really understand how quick it goes. And I do not want to turn around and look back at these years with regret.
Yeah.
And that's what changed. And that's not just about real estate. That's just about my relationship to time. I think we
Mhm.
talked earlier about the phone. I don't remember if that was before or
Yeah.
after we recorded.
Yeah.
Um, that was the biggest change. In a way, you get told that you're pursuing something that's passive so that you get freedom. But my experience of it was that it wasn't passive and I did not get freedom. I got a job, the
Yeah.
thing that I was trying not to have.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
Um,
tends to happen a lot with real estate. Like we are getting this to increase passive income, but then we become landlords, and it's structured in a way that people have a lot of negative experiences. A lot. That's why I went to the turnkey route. And that was my strategy of how I ended up in the turnkey route because I was going down that ownership. I still have that house, and it's a bastard. It's underwater by like 20, 30K right now. So even if I wanted to sell it, I can't even really do it right now. So
oh,
no,
I
I
I
absolutely
know
hear
that.
you.
Yeah. Tell me about your turnkey. I'm fascinated. What tell me more about that.
Yeah, so turnkeys, the model works is turnkey providers will buy a bunch of distressed properties and then they do a rehab on it and they sell it to investors on a premium. So that's how they make money. The issue with that is you really have to be in the right location with the right team
Yeah.
because a lot of times with the companies that are more profit driven, not necessarily values forward, they will price gouge you on that flip. So it's not beneficial. But these companies that are good and that really are values forward, their whole business model is I want to sell you 10 properties and not one. And that, I wish more people would realize that that business model is more profitable in the long end because you're forced to tell other people about it. You're going to have a good experience and you're going to build a relationship. And guess who you're going to bring? Probably your friends and family and other
Yeah.
people that you
Oh,
trust to people that you trust. You
yeah.
mentioned that in the private lending industry, like as you're jumping in, okay, cool, this is a great concept, but I don't want to get burned. If you give people a path to where they're not going to get burned, not 100% guaranteed, but a good path, and that's going to be more advantageous. And um, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I jumped to the turnkey route because there is those different benefits with ownership, right? You have the cash flow of the property, and then the taxes and equity. That's the big thing, and that's why I like combining them right now. But I have noticed a trend as people tend to get older too, even if there is still a little work involved with the turnkey space. And just to have everything completely hands off, there really is no argument that private lending is like that is the end all be all. It's basically just like an ETF once you get the full ball rolling and your due diligence is done. But yeah, that's a little bit about the turnkey route.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, hands off. But I think, again, circling back to something we talked about, all these experiences are so good because we get to learn about ourselves through them, and we get
Mm,
to watch ourselves evolve through them. And then, once I do reach retirement age, I'm not saying I want everything hands off. I want to do only what I love. And after at
yeah.
that point, I'll have like decades of experience, whether it's stock market or ownership or private money lending or creative financing, which I also do. I
Mm,
will at that point know what do I love and what do I want to put my time towards. Because I don't see myself just sitting back and doing nothing. I see
yeah.
myself doing, you use the word optional. I want to opt into things that I love, that fill my soul, that
Yeah.
make me happy, and that allow me to help, so
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you can only sit back on the beach and drink
yeah,
margaritas for, I think like people like me and you will go about crazy in 2 weeks. So we need to be doing something. But hey,
exactly.
we're ending up on time here. I got to jump to another call, but can you throw out your socials really quick? How can people get a hold of you?
You're not gonna like this. I'm not on socials. I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Real person?
I know, right? I'll give you my website is called Quick Caring Home Solutions. I can give you a QR code if you post this somewhere or a link to that. You can contact me by email. Um, I think the people that should, I think if you're interested in being match made to people who have been vetted as investors and operators like me, contact me and I will send you a link. It's invite only. I will send you a link to get into this community. I think it is worth your while as a private money lender. And that's called LendSmart, but I don't think it's something you could find online. You have to be invited in.
Sweet. Well, hey, I appreciate your time so much. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you more as we continue to talk. I know we'll continue to grow
For
alongside each
sure.
other, but I appreciate your time. I'll put your website in the description when I post this thing and everything. But for real, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Austin.